Hey everyone, welcome back to English in Fluency. I am Alex, and I am so happy you are here with me today. We have a really important lesson, and honestly, this is something I used to struggle with so much when I was learning languages, and I see my students struggle with it too. It is that moment when your heart beats a little faster because you didn't understand what someone just said, but you are too polite or too shy to stop them. You just nod your head and smile, hoping that maybe it wasn't important. But then, later, you realize it was very important. And now, you are in trouble. Today, we are going to fix that. We are going to talk about B1 English listening practice, but not just listening to pass a test. We are talking about real life. We are going to learn how to understand clarification and how to ask checking questions so you can avoid those misunderstandings that make you feel awkward. I want you to imagine a situation. You are in a coffee shop, maybe in London or New York, and the barista asks you a question. There is noise, the machine is steaming milk, people are talking, and the barista speaks fast. You hear something like, "Do you want room for cream?" Or, "Is this for here or to go?" But you are not sure. You panic. You say, "Yes," but you don't even know what you agreed to. Maybe you just paid extra for something you didn't want. This happens to everyone, even native speakers, but for English learners, it is scary. Today, we are going to give you the tools to handle this with confidence. We are going to learn how to stop the conversation politely, ask the person to say it again, and check if you understood them correctly. This is going to change how you feel when you speak English. Let's start with the basics. The most important thing to realize is that asking for clarification is not rude. In fact, it shows that you are listening and that you care about getting it right. So, first, we need the simple phrases to use when we just didn't hear the words. When the noise is too loud, or the person spoke too fast, you can use very short, natural phrases. You don't need long, complicated sentences. You can just say, "Sorry," or "Excuse me." Raising your voice a little bit at the end, like a question, makes it sound polite. You can also say, "I didn't catch that." This is a very common, natural expression. To catch something means to hear it. So, "I didn't catch that" means "I didn't hear that." Let me give you an example. Imagine I am talking to my friend, Sarah. We are walking down a busy street. Sarah is telling me about a party. She says, "We should meet at the venue at 8. But a loud bus drives by, and I only hear the word 8. I don't know if she meant 8 in the morning or 8 at night. I shouldn't guess. I need to stop and ask. I can simply say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Did you say 8? Sarah will then repeat it. "Yeah, 8 o'clock tonight." See how easy that is? I avoided going to the party at the wrong time just by asking one simple question. But sometimes it is not about the noise. Sometimes you hear the words, but you don't understand the meaning. Maybe the person used a word you don't know, or they are talking about a topic that is new to you. In this case, you need to ask for clarification of the meaning, not just the repetition of the words. You can say, "What do you mean by?" This is a great phrase. Let's say you are at work, and your boss, a guy named David, tells you, "I need you to streamline this report." You know the word report, but maybe you don't know streamline. You are confused. Do not just say, "Okay." Instead, you should say, "Sorry, David, what do you mean by streamline?" David will then explain it simply. "Oh, I mean, make it shorter and simpler." Focus on the main points. Now you understand. You saved yourself hours of doing the wrong work. Another great phrase for this situation is, could you explain that in a different way? Sometimes, the way someone explains something the first time is just too complicated. Maybe they use big words or long sentences. Asking for a different way is perfectly okay. It shows you are trying to learn. You can also say, I'm not sure I understand. Can you go over that again? This is very polite. It puts the responsibility on yourself, saying, I am not sure, rather than saying, you are not clear. People like to help when you ask nicely. Now, let's move to the second part of our lesson today, which is checking questions. This is when you think you understood, but you want to be 100% sure before you walk away or do something. This is the safety net for your conversations. The most common way to check is to use the phrase, do you mean? Let's go back to the coffee shop example. The barista asks, do you want room for cream? You might think room means space in the cup, and cream is the white liquid. But you are not sure if they are asking if you want a separate cup, so you check. You say, do you mean you want to leave space in the cup for milk? The barista will say, yes, exactly. Now you are confident. Or maybe they say, no, I mean, do you want a separate cup of cream? Either way, you got the right answer. You can also use the phrase, so, what you're saying is... This is excellent for summarizing. It shows the other person that you are really listening and thinking about what they said. Imagine you are planning a trip with your sister, Emily. Emily is looking at her phone and she says, the train leaves at 4:10, but we have to be there at least 20 minutes before because of the security checks. That is a lot of information. You want to check it. You say, so, what you're saying is, we need to be at the station by about 3:50? Emily thinks for a second and says, yes, that's right. Or maybe she says, no, wait, 4:10 is 4:10, so 20 minutes before is 3:50. Yes, you got it. You just confirmed the time. Let's try another scenario. This happens to me all the time. You are making an appointment, maybe with a doctor or a dentist. The receptionist says, Mr. Jones is available on Tuesday at 2 or Thursday at 4:30. You prefer Tuesday, but you want to make sure you don't miss it. You need to use a check-in question. You can say, just to confirm, Tuesday at 2 p.m. This is short and clear. The receptionist says, yes, that's correct. You say, great, I'll take it. No misunderstandings. But what happens if you really didn't understand anything? What if the person spoke for 2 minutes straight, very fast, and you are completely lost? It is okay to admit this. You don't have to pretend. You can say, I'm sorry, I got a bit lost there. Could you please say that one more time, a little slower? This is a powerful sentence. I got a bit lost is a very natural human way to say, I didn't understand. Add in a little slower helps the speaker know how to adjust their voice for you. Most people will be very happy to slow down. They want you to understand them just as much as you want to understand. I want to share a story about my friend, Mike. Mike moved to an English-speaking country about a year ago. He was very shy about his English. One day, he went to the bank to open an account. The bank teller was a nice woman named Jessica. She started asking him many questions about his address, his job, and his ID. She was speaking quickly. Mike didn't understand the question about his ID. He thought she asked for his email, but she actually asked for his ID card. He nodded and gave her his email address. Jessica looked confused. "I need your identification card, not your email," she said. Mike felt so embarrassed. His face turned red. After that, he decided he would never let that happen again. He learned these phrases we are talking about today. The next time he went to the bank and he didn't understand, he said, "Sorry, could you say that again?" Jessica smiled and repeated it. Mike realized that asking for help was much better than feeling embarrassed. Now, let's practice some of these phrases together. I want you to imagine you are in a clothing store. You are looking for a jacket. The shop assistant, a young man named Tom, comes up to you. He says, "This jacket is water-resistant and breathable, perfect for the autumn showers." You don't know what breathable means in the context of a jacket. What do you say? You look at Tom and you ask, "What do you mean by breathable?" Tom explains, "It means the fabric lets air pass through, so you don't get too hot and sweaty inside it." You nod and say, "Oh, I see. Thank you." That was easy, right? You learned a new word, and now you know if the jacket is right for you. Let's try another one. You are at a restaurant with a colleague, Anna. You are looking at the menu. Anna points to a dish and says, "I highly recommend the risotto. It's divine." You look at the word divine. Maybe you know it has a religious meaning, but here it seems strange. You want to check. You say, "Sorry, divine? What do you mean exactly?" Anna laughs and says, "Oh, it just means it tastes amazing, like heaven." You smile. "Okay, I'll try it then." See how asking these questions can actually make the conversation more friendly and fun? It is also very important to check details when you are listening to instructions. This is where mistakes can be costly. Imagine your landlord, a man named Mr. Henderson, is fixing something in your apartment. He tells you, "When you leave for work, make sure you turn the switch on the heater to the anti-frost setting." That sounds technical. You need to be sure. You ask a checking question. "So, do you mean I should turn the switch to the snowflake symbol?" Mr. Henderson nods. "Yes, exactly, the snowflake." You are safe. You won't come home to a cold apartment or a broken heater. We also use checking questions to confirm negative information. Sometimes, understanding what is not happening is just as important as understanding what is happening. For example, your friend Lisa invites you to a concert. She says, "The tickets are $50, but that doesn't include the parking fee." You want to be clear about the money. You ask, "So, the parking is not included in the ticket price?" Lisa says, "No, sorry, it's an extra $10. You are glad you asked. Now you can bring the right amount of cash. Sometimes, people speak with a strong accent or they mumble. This is not your fault, but it is your job to manage the conversation if you want to understand. If someone is mumbling, meaning they don't open their mouth enough, you can politely say, "I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Could you speak up a little bit, please?" Speak up means speak louder. You can also ask them to write it down if it is really important. If you are at a train station and the announcement is unclear, go to the information desk. Ask, "Sorry, I missed the announcement. Could you tell me which platform the train to Liverpool is on?" They will usually point to a screen or write it on a piece of paper for you. Let's talk about tone. The way you say these phrases changes everything. If you say, "What?" with an angry face, people will think you are rude. But if you say, "Sorry, what was that?" with a smile or with a look of genuine curiosity, people will be happy to repeat themselves. Your voice should go up a little at the end. It should sound soft, not hard. Practice saying sorry with a soft, rising tone. It sounds much friendlier. I want to do a longer role play with you now to bring this all together. Imagine you are a new employee at a design company. Your manager, a woman named Karen, is giving you your first task. She speaks quite fast. Karen says, "Okay, so for the Johnson project, I need you to gather all the photos from the marketing folder, resize them to fit the brochure template, and then send them to the printer by noon. But don't include the draft versions, only the final ones." Whoa, that was a lot of information. If you are new, this is overwhelming. Let's break it down using clarification and checking questions. First, you need to clarify the location. You say, "Sorry, Karen, could you repeat the folder name? I didn't catch that." Karen says, "Sure, it's the marketing folder, under Clients." You write that down. Next, you want to check the task. You say, "So, let me check. You want me to resize the photos for the brochure?" Karen says, "Yes, exactly." Then you need to clarify the deadline. "And you need them by noon today?" Karen checks her watch. "Yes, noon." Finally, you need to check which photos to use. "And just to confirm, I should only use the final versions, not the drafts?" Karen smiles. "Perfect. You got it." See how that conversation went? You went from being confused to having a clear list of tasks. Karen feels confident that you understood, and you feel confident that you can do the job. This is the power of clarification questions. They turn a stressful situation into a successful one. Now, let's look at a more social situation. You are at a party. You don't know many people. A man named David comes up to you. He starts talking about football or soccer, depending on where you are. He is very excited. He says, "Did you see that header in the last minute of the match? It was absolutely incredible." You might not know much about football. What is a header? Is it a part of the email or the text? You are confused. You can just nod and smile, but then the conversation might die. Or you can ask for clarification to keep it going. You say, "Sorry, I'm not a big football fan. What is a header?" David is happy to explain. "Oh, it's when a player hits the ball with their head." You laugh. "Oh, really? That sounds painful." Now you are having a conversation. By admitting you didn't know and asking, you connected with David. This brings me to another point. Don't be afraid to say you don't know something. In B1 English, you are expected to understand a lot, but nobody knows everything. Native speakers ask for clarification all the time. If I am talking to a doctor and they use a medical word I don't know, I ask them. If I am talking to a mechanic about my car and they say alternator, I might ask, "Is that the part that charges the battery?" Just to be sure. It is a sign of intelligence to ask questions, not a sign of stupidity. Let's practice some specific phrases you can use to check understanding. These are very high-frequency phrases. One is, "Are you saying that?" This is used when something sounds surprising or serious. Imagine your roommate tells you, "I'm thinking of moving out next month." That is big news. You want to check you heard it right. You ask, "Are you saying that you want to leave the apartment?" It shows you are taking it seriously. Your roommate says, "Well, maybe. I'm just thinking about it." Another useful phrase is, "Does that mean?" This helps you understand the consequences of an action. Your boss says, "We are cutting down the budget for the party." You ask, does that mean we can't hire the DJ? The boss says, yes, I'm afraid so. Now you know the consequence. We also have short phrases like right and okay at the end of our sentences to check understanding while we are speaking. This is a great skill for you, too. If you are speaking, you can pause and say, do you know what I mean? This invites the other person to ask you for clarification if they need it. It makes the conversation a two-way street. I want to talk about a difficult situation. Sometimes you understand the words, but the meaning seems rude or strange. In these cases, it is very important to check your understanding before you get angry. Maybe it is just a cultural difference or a misunderstanding. For example, someone says to you, "You look very tired today." In some cultures, this is an insult. In English, it might just be a concern, or maybe a clumsy compliment. Instead of getting mad, ask a check-in question. Do you mean I don't look well? Or, are you saying I should go home and sleep? Usually the person will backtrack and say, oh no, I just meant you've been working hard. Asking saves you from a fight. Let's do another practice scenario. This time, you are at the airport. You are at the check-in desk. The airline employee says, I'm afraid your luggage is 2 kilos overweight. You'll need to pay an excess fee or take some items out. This is stressful. You need to clarify the options. You ask, sorry, how much is the excess fee? The employee says, it's $20 per kilo. You do the math, that is $40. You want to check the other option. And if I take items out, can I carry them in my hand luggage? The employee says, yes, as long as they fit under the seat. Now you can decide. Is it worth $40 to keep the bag as is? Or do you want to move things? You made a decision based on clear information. I want to emphasize that listening is an active skill. It is not just sitting back and letting words wash over you. Active listening involves processing the information and reacting to it. When you ask a clarification question, you are proving that you are an active listener. You are engaging with the speaker. Teachers, bosses, and friends appreciate this. It shows you care. Let's try a rapid-fire round of short examples. I will give you a situation, and you think about what you would say. Situation 1. A friend says, let's meet at the subway station. You don't know which one. You ask, sorry, which station? Or, do you mean the one near the park? Situation 2. A colleague says, the meeting is postponed. You want to know when? You ask, do you know when it will be rescheduled? Or, does that mean it's not happening today? Situation 3. Someone says, I love your shoes. They are really cool. You want to say thanks, but also check if they are being sarcastic. You can check their tone, but maybe you just say, oh, thank you. Do you really like them? And see their face. Situation 4. You are in a classroom. The teacher says, please turn to page 45. You are on page 50. You think you missed something. You ask, sorry, did you say 45 or 55? See how natural that feels? These are not textbook questions. These are real questions real people ask every day. Now, I want to talk about body language. When you are asking for clarification, your body helps. Lean in slightly. It shows interest. Look the person in the eye. Don't look at your phone. If you are looking at your phone while saying, sorry, it looks like you don't care. If you look at them and say sorry, it looks like you really want to understand. Also, use filler words to sound natural. Before you ask your question, you can say, sorry, or actually, could you? It softens the request. Actually, could you repeat that? Sounds very polite. Hang on a second is another good one. It means wait a moment. Hang on a second. I didn't get that last part. It sounds very conversational, like something a friend would say. Let's imagine a scenario where you are giving directions to a tourist. You are the speaker this time. You say, "Go straight down this road. Take a left at the traffic lights, and the museum is right there on the corner." The tourist looks confused. They might say, "Sorry, left or right at the lights?" This is a checking question. You clarify. Left, yes. The tourist then says, "Okay, so it's on the corner?" They are checking the location. Yes, exactly. You feel good that you help them get to where they need to go. I also want to mention that sometimes people use idioms or slang that you might not know at a B1 level. If someone says, "It's raining cats and dogs outside," you might be very confused if you take it literally. You might ask, "Sorry, what does that mean?" And they will say, "It means it's raining very heavily." By asking, you learned a cool new idiom. If you hadn't asked, you might have looked outside for animals and felt silly later. So, always ask about expressions you don't know. Here is another common problem. Telephone calls. On the phone, you cannot see the person's face or lips. It is much harder to understand. Therefore, clarification questions are even more important on the phone. If you are on a call and the signal is bad, you can say, "You're breaking up a little. Could you say that again?" Breaking up means the sound is cutting in and out. Or you can say, "The line is very bad. Can I call you back?" This is a great way to manage the situation. Don't struggle through a bad call. Just ask to call back when it is clearer. Imagine you are on the phone with a customer service agent named John. He says, "I can offer you a refund of £30 or a voucher for 50. You want to make sure you heard the numbers right. You say, "Sorry, did you say £30 cash or a voucher for 50? John confirms, "Yes, that's right." Now you can make the best choice for you. We should also talk about how to respond when someone asks you for clarification. This happens too. Maybe you are speaking and someone says, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." Do not get annoyed. Do not say, "I just said that." Just smile and repeat it, maybe slower or using simpler words. Say, "Oh, sure," I said. If they ask, "What do you mean?" explain it in a different way. Say, "Basically, what I mean is." This makes you a good communicator, not just a good listener. Let's go back to the concept of the checking question. It is really the bridge between confusion and clarity. Without that bridge, you are stuck on one side, not knowing how to move forward. With the bridge, you can cross over to understanding. The more you use these questions, the stronger that bridge becomes. It becomes automatic. You won't have to think, "What phrase did Alex teach me?" It will just come out. "Sorry? Do you mean? So, is that right?" I want to share one last story about a student of mine. Her name was Sophie. Sophie was very quiet in class. She never asked questions. One day, we were doing a listening exercise about a cooking recipe. The speaker said, "Chop the onions finely." Sophie looked worried. I paused the audio and asked her if she was okay. She whispered, "I don't know what chop means." I told her, "That is a great question. Can anyone help Sophie?" Another student explained it meant to cut with a knife. After that, Sophie started asking more questions. She realized that everyone else had questions too. They were just afraid to ask. Her English improved so fast because she started clarifying things she didn't understand. She stopped guessing and started knowing. So, my advice to you is to be like Sophie. Be brave. Ask the questions. It is better to ask and feel a little silly for 5 seconds than to stay silent and feel lost for the whole conversation. Remember, the goal of English in Fluency is not just to pass exams, but to communicate in the real world. In the real world, people mumble, noises happen, and accents vary. Your ability to clarify is your survival tool. Let's move on now to some slightly more complex situations where we can use these skills. Let's start by talking about a very common problem: vague words. In English, we use words like soon, later, a bit, or some all the time. But these words are not specific. If your boss says, "I need this report soon," that is stressful. When is soon? In 5 minutes? In an hour? Tomorrow? You cannot know. So, you have to ask. But you have to be careful. You cannot just say, "when," because that can sound a little aggressive. Instead, we use a softening phrase. You can say, "When exactly were you thinking?" Or, "Do you need this by the end of the day?" This clarifies the deadline without sounding rude. Imagine you are planning a weekend trip with your friend Chris. Chris says, "We should leave in the morning." Again, this is vague. The morning is a long time. It could be 6 a.m. or 11 a.m. You need to know so you can sleep. You ask, "Okay, so did you want to leave early, like around 8, or a bit later?" This gives Chris a choice. Chris can then say, "Oh, let's leave later, maybe around 10. Now you can relax. See how asking for clarification actually reduces stress? It takes the guesswork out of the situation. Now, let's talk about a skill that will make you sound like an advanced speaker. It is using indirect questions. When we ask for clarification, we usually start with a polite phrase before we ask the actual question. Instead of saying, "Where is the bank?" which is okay, but a bit direct, we say, "Could you tell me where the bank is?" Or, "Do you know where the bank is?" This softens the question. It makes it sound like you are asking for their help, not demanding information. In a clarification context, instead of shouting, "What?" you can say, "Would you mind repeating that?" Or, "Could you possibly say that a little slower?" Let's practice this with a scenario. You are at a train station and you ask a stranger for help. You say, "Excuse me, could you tell me which platform goes to the city center?" The stranger looks at the board and says, "It's platform 3, but there's a delay." You hear the word delay, but you want to know how long. You don't just say, "How long?" You say, "Do you know how long the delay is?" The stranger says, "About 10 minutes. You say, "Okay, thank you." This exchange is polite, clear, and very effective. I want to take you into a workplace setting now because this is where accurate listening is critical. Let's say you work in a kitchen. The head chef, a man named Gordon, is very busy. He shouts out an order. "I need the onions chopped for the sauce, and then I need you to prep the salad station." You hear onions and salad, but you are not sure about the order. Should you do the onions first or the salad? If you get this wrong, Gordon will be angry. You need to check the priority. You shout back politely, "So, do you want the onions done first, Gordon?" He shouts back, "Yes, onions first, then the salad." You saved yourself a mistake by checking the sequence. Another really useful phrase for checking information is, "Let me see if I've got this right." This is a wonderful way to summarize what you heard. It shows the other person that you are making an effort. Imagine you are at the bank and the teller is explaining a new savings account. She says, "You have to deposit at least $100 a month, and you can't withdraw money for 6 months without paying a fee." That is a lot of rules. You want to be sure. You say, "Let me see if I've got this right. I put in $100 every month, and if I take it out before 6 months, I lose money?" The teller nods. Exactly. Now you have understood the rules perfectly. Sometimes the problem is not the words, but the speed. Native speakers often link words together. For example, "Do you want to" sounds like "Juana." If you hear "Juana go to the cinema," it might sound like one long word. If you are confused, you can ask the person to break it down. You can say, "Sorry, could you say that sentence one more time, but a little slower?" Or you can repeat the part you understood and let them fill in the rest. If you hear "cinema" at the end, you can say, "Did you ask if I want to go to the cinema?" This is a great strategy. You take a guess based on the words you caught, and you check it. Let's try a role play involving a doctor. Medical English is very important. You are visiting a doctor, Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith is looking at your prescription. He says, "Take one pill 3 times a day with food and avoid driving while you are taking this medication." This is serious. You need to be safe. You have 2 pieces of information here: the pills and the driving. You check the pills first. "Sorry, just to clarify, 3 times a day? Does that mean morning, afternoon, and night?" Dr. Smith says, "Yes, that's right, with breakfast, lunch, and dinner." Then you check the other part. "And you said I shouldn't drive?" Dr. Smith looks serious. "That's correct. It makes you drowsy." You are so glad you asked. You could have had an accident if you just nodded and left. I also want to talk about a situation where you might need to correct someone else's understanding. Sometimes you are the one speaking, and the other person looks confused. Or they repeat something back to you that is wrong. You need to correct them gently. If your friend says, "So, we are meeting at the Italian place at 7, but you actually said 8, you need to fix it." You can say, "Actually, I think I said 8, not 7. Adding "actually" is a polite way to correct someone. You don't say, "No, you are wrong." You say, "Actually, it's at 8. Imagine you are ordering food at a restaurant. The waiter asks, "Would you like the soup or the salad?" You want the salad, but the waiter repeats, "Okay, so that's the soup." You need to stop him. You say, "Oh, sorry, actually I asked for the salad." The waiter apologizes and fixes the order. It is much better to correct them immediately than to get the wrong food and be unhappy. Now, let's look at some difficult pronunciation or accents. Sometimes you will speak to people from different countries who speak English with a different accent than you are used to. It is perfectly okay to admit that you are having trouble with the accent. You can say, "I'm sorry, I'm not used to this accent. Could you please write that down for me?" Or, "Your accent is new to me. Could you speak a little slower?" Most people will understand. They know their accent might be difficult for others. I remember when I traveled to Scotland, I had a very hard time understanding the locals at first. I had to ask them to repeat things many times. They were always patient. Here is a scenario involving a landlord and a tenant. You are renting an apartment. Your landlord, Mr. Thompson, calls you. He has a strong accent. He says, "The plumber is coming on Tuesday to fix the tap." You hear the word plumber and Tuesday, but you are not sure which tap. Is it the kitchen tap or the bathroom tap? You ask, "Sorry, Mr. Thompson, which tap is he coming to fix?" Mr. Thompson repeats, "The kitchen tap, the one that is leaking." You say, "Great, thank you." Now you know to leave the kitchen accessible. We should also practice listening for negative details. This is when someone tells you what not to do. It is very easy to miss the word not or don't if you are not listening carefully. If someone says, "Don't turn left," and you only hear "turn left," you will get lost. This is why checking questions are vital for safety. Imagine you are driving with a friend giving directions. They say, "Don't take the highway, take the back roads." You want to check. You ask, "So, I should avoid the highway?" They say, "Yes, stay on the local roads." You just avoided a traffic jam or a toll road. Let's talk about how to handle a situation where someone is giving you a phone number or an address. These are strings of numbers or words that are hard to remember. The standard checking question here is, "Let me read that back to you." This is what professionals do. If the bank gives you a reference number, you say, "Let me read that back to you to make sure I have it right." Then you repeat the numbers. "So that is 5521. They say, "Yes, that's correct." Do this with addresses too. If a friend gives you their new address, repeat it back. "Okay, so that is 42 Baker Street, flat 3. Your friend can confirm or correct you. I want to share a personal story about how a checking question saved my vacation. A few years ago, I was booking a flight. The agent on the phone said, "Your flight leaves on the 12th at noon." I had been looking at the 13th on my computer. I was confused. I asked, "I'm sorry, did you say the 12th or the 13th? She checked her screen. "Oh, I am sorry. I meant the 13th. If I hadn't asked that, I would have shown up at the airport on the wrong day. I would have missed my flight. That one question saved my holiday." Let's do a more complex exercise now. I am going to describe a process, and I want you to think about how you would clarify it. Imagine you are in a technology class. The teacher says, "To reset the device, you need to hold down the power button and the volume down button at the same time for 10 seconds until the logo appears." See, that is a lot of steps. You might get confused about which buttons. You raise your hand and ask, "Sorry, which two buttons do I hold together?" The teacher points. The power button and the one that says volume down. You try it, but nothing happens. You ask another checking question. "I'm doing that, but nothing is happening. Do I need to plug it in first?" The teacher says, "Ah, yes, make sure it is plugged in." You solved the problem. It is also very useful to clarify expectations in social situations. If a friend says, "Dress casual for the party," what does that mean? To some people, casual means jeans and a t-shirt. To others, it means nice trousers and a shirt. If you want to feel comfortable, you can ask, "When you say casual, do you mean jeans are okay?" Your friend says, "Yeah, jeans are fine. Don't wear a suit." Now you know what to wear, and you won't feel out of place. Sometimes people use sarcasm, and it can be hard to hear. Sarcasm is when someone says the opposite of what they mean, usually in a funny way. For example, it is raining very hard, and your friend looks out the window and says, "Great weather, huh?" If you just listen to the words, you think they like the rain. But if you look at their face, or the rain, you know they are joking. If you are not sure, you can check the emotion. You can say, "Are you being serious?" Or, "Do you really like the rain?" They will laugh and say, "No, it's terrible." Checking the tone helps you understand the feeling behind the words. Let's move on to a business meeting scenario. You are in a meeting with your team. Your manager, Sarah, is assigning tasks. She says, "I need John to handle the emails and Maria to handle the client calls." She doesn't mention you. You are wondering, what about me? You need to clarify your role. You can say, "Sorry, Sarah. What would you like me to focus on?" Sarah realizes she forgot you. "Oh, right, Alex. I need you to prepare the slides for the presentation." You are glad you spoke up. If you stayed silent, you might have sat there doing nothing, which would look bad. We also need to talk about clarifying time zones. If you work or have friends in other countries, this is essential. Someone might say, "Let's have a call at 3 p.m. You need to know, 3 p.m., whose time? You can ask, "Is that 3 p.m. your time or my time?" This is a classic checking question. Imagine you are in London and your friend is in New York. You say, "3 p.m. your time is 8 p.m. my time. Is that okay?" You clarify the difference so you don't miss the call. Let's practice with a shopping scenario for clothes. You are buying a jacket. The label says, "Dry clean only." You are not sure what that means. Does it mean you can wash it? You ask the shop assistant, "This says dry clean only. Does that mean I can't put it in the washing machine?" The assistant says, "That's right. It will shrink if you wash it. You have to take it to a dry cleaner." You are glad you asked because, otherwise, you might have ruined your new jacket. Another important area is food and allergies. If you have an allergy, you must be very clear. You go to a restaurant. You ask the waiter, "Does this dish contain nuts?" The waiter says, "No, it doesn't." But you want to be absolutely sure. You use a checking question. "Are you sure there are no nuts in the sauce or sprinkled on top?" The waiter goes to check with the chef. He comes back. "Actually, there are peanuts on top. I'm sorry." You just saved yourself a trip to the hospital. Never be afraid to double-check when it comes to your health. I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of asking questions. Many students feel that asking questions makes them look weak. But I want to tell you the opposite. In business and in life, people who ask questions are seen as smarter. Why? Because they care about accuracy. They don't make assumptions. If a boss gives you a task and you ask 5 clarifying questions, the boss knows you will do the job right. If you say "okay" and then do it wrong, the boss thinks you are not reliable. So, think of clarification questions as a sign of professionalism. Let's try a scenario where you are given a speech or a presentation. Sometimes, when you are speaking, you might see people looking confused. You can stop and ask them, "Is that clear so far?" Or, "Does anyone have any questions about this part?" This gives you a chance to clarify before you move on. It is better to stop and explain than to finish and have everyone confused. Now, let's look at a situation involving travel and transport. You are at a bus stop. A stranger asks you, "Does this bus go to the mall?" You look at the sign. It says airport. You are not sure if it also goes to the mall. Instead of guessing, you can say, "I'm not sure, but I think it only goes to the airport." You might want to ask the driver. This is a polite way to clarify that you don't know the answer. It is better to admit you don't know than to give the wrong information. We should also practice listening for specific details in a story. If someone is telling you a story about their weekend, they might say, "I went to the park with my brother and his dog." If you want to keep the conversation going, you can check the details. Oh, you have a brother? Is he older or younger? This shows you are listening. Or, what kind of dog does he have? These are clarification questions that build relationships. They show you care about the person. Imagine you are at a gym. A trainer is showing you how to use a machine. He says, adjust the seat to level 5 and keep your back straight against the pad. You sit down, but level 5 feels too high. You check your understanding. You said level 5? It feels a bit high for my legs. Can I lower it? The trainer looks and says, yes, you can go to level 4. That's better. You adjusted the instruction to fit your body, which is smart. You don't have to follow instructions blindly if they don't feel right. Let's talk about misunderstanding jokes. Jokes are often the hardest part of a language because they rely on wordplay or cultural knowledge. If someone tells a joke and everyone laughs but you don't get it, it is okay to ask. You can lean over to a friend and whisper, sorry, I didn't get that. Why is that funny? Your friend will explain it. You might laugh once you understand, or you might not think it's funny, but at least you are not left out of the loop. Here is another workplace example involving deadlines. Your colleague sends you an email that says, please finish this ASAP. ASAP stands for as soon as possible. But that is still vague. You walk over to their desk. You say, hey, I got your email about the report. When do you actually need it? Is it okay if I finish it by tomorrow morning? Your colleague says, yes, tomorrow morning is fine. You turned a stressful, urgent request into a manageable task just by clarifying. I want to remind you that these phrases work in every English-speaking country. Whether you are in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else. Sorry, I didn't catch that works. Do you mean works? English is a global language, and these tools are universal. Let's do a comprehensive role play to put it all together. You are in a new city. You want to join a local library? You go to the front desk. The librarian, a nice woman named Susan, starts explaining the rules. Susan says, hello, you can get a library card today. You just need to show me 2 proofs of address, like a bill or a bank statement, and a photo ID. You can borrow up to 10 books at a time, and you have to bring them back in 3 weeks. If you are late, there is a small fine, but if you renew them online, you can keep them longer. That is a lot of information. Let's clarify step by step. First, the documents. You say, sorry, did you say I need 2 proofs of address? Susan says, yes, 2. Next, the borrowing limit. You check. And did you say I can borrow 10 books? Susan says, that's right, 10. Then, the time. And I have 3 weeks to bring them back? Susan nods. Finally, the fine. And if I renew them online, I don't have to pay a fine? Susan smiles. Exactly, as long as you renew them before the due date. You thank Susan and fill out the form. You now understand the library rules perfectly. You won't get a fine because you clarified the process. I really hope you can see the pattern here. Listen, identify what is unclear, ask a polite question, and listen to the answer. It is a cycle. It is a dance between the speaker and the listener. Good listeners are not just people with good ears. They are people who are active in the conversation. They participate by checking and clarifying. To keep going, let's tackle some of the most challenging situations you will ever face in English. We are going to talk about what to do when the conversation gets technical, how to manage group discussions where everyone is speaking fast, and how to handle those moments when you feel frustrated or overwhelmed. Let's begin by talking about a very specific kind of confusion. Technical jargon. This happens a lot when you are buying something expensive, like a computer, a car, or a house. The person selling the product uses words that only experts know. They do this to sound professional, but it can be very confusing for the buyer. Imagine you are at a car dealership. You want to buy a used car. The salesman, a man named Ricky, is showing you a car. He pops the hood and says, "This engine has a dual overhead camshaft, and it's been turbocharged. Plus, the transmission has a limited slip differential." If you are not a mechanic, that sounds like a foreign language. You might feel stupid. But don't worry. You don't need to be a mechanic to buy a car. You just need to know if the car is good. You can stop Ricky and ask for the translation. You can say, "Sorry, Ricky, that's a bit technical for me. In simple terms, does that mean the engine is powerful and reliable?" Ricky realizes he needs to speak normally. He says, "Oh yes. Basically, it means the car is fast and handles well on corners." See? You got the information you needed without learning the engineering. Another way to handle this is to ask about the benefits, not the features. A feature is what it is. A benefit is what it does for you. If Ricky says, "It has Bluetooth connectivity," and you don't know why that matters, you can ask, "Sorry, what does that let me do?" He will say, "It lets you play music from your phone without wires." Now you understand the benefit. Always ask, "What does that do for me?" Or, "What is the advantage of that?" when you hear a technical word. Now, let's move on to a high-pressure situation. The medical field. Going to the doctor is stressful in any language. When you are sick, your brain doesn't work as well, and the doctor might use medical terms. You must be brave here. You are the patient. You have the right to understand your own health. Imagine you are seeing a doctor, Dr. Evans. She looks at your X-ray and says, "You have a fracture in the distal radius, and we will need to immobilize it for a few weeks." You hear fracture, and you know that means a broken bone. But distal radius and immobilize are scary words. You need to calm down and ask. You say, "Dr. Evans, could you explain that in simpler language? Where exactly is the break?" Dr. Evans points to your wrist. "It's the wrist bone, near the thumb." You then ask about the treatment. "And when you say immobilize, do you mean I need a cast?" She says, "Yes, a plaster cast to keep it still." By asking, you turned a scary medical diagnosis into a clear plan. A broken wrist needs a cast. I want to talk about a scenario that scares many students: group conversations. Imagine you are at a dinner party or a meeting with 5 or 6 people. Everyone is talking at once. People are interrupting, joking, and speaking fast. You want to join in, but by the time you think of what to say, the topic has changed. Or, someone tells a joke, everyone laughs, and you are just sitting there smiling because you don't know what is happening. In a group, you cannot stop the whole conversation every time you miss a word. It is better to use a strategy called checking with a neighbor. Turn to the person sitting next to you, perhaps a friendly woman named Jenny, and whisper your question. You can whisper, "Sorry, Jenny, I missed that. What did he just say?" Jenny will whisper back, "He said he is moving to France next month." Now you are back in the loop. You can then join the main conversation and say, "Oh, wow, you are moving to France." Another technique for groups is to wait for a lull, a quiet moment, and then summarize what you think happened. You can say, "Hang on, Let me see if I got this right. Are we saying that the meeting is postponed until next week? Someone will confirm, yes, exactly. This shows you were listening, even if you were quiet. Let's discuss a situation involving disagreement or argument. Sometimes people are arguing, and they ask you to take a side. This is dangerous if you didn't fully understand what they are arguing about. Imagine two friends, Tom and Jerry, are arguing about a movie. Tom says, "The plot was full of holes." Jerry says, "No, the narrative was non-linear. You just didn't get it." They look at you. "Alex, who do you agree with?" Do not guess. If you choose a side and you are wrong, or if you didn't see the movie, you look foolish. You need to clarify your position. You can say, "Hold on, guys, I'm a bit lost. What exactly do you mean by non-linear?" Or, if you haven't seen it, just say, "I actually haven't seen it, so I can't judge. What's the movie about?" It is better to admit you don't know than to pretend and get into an argument you can't win. We should also look at how to handle it when the other person gets annoyed. This is a fear many students have. What if I ask them to repeat, and they get angry? First, if someone gets angry because you are trying to understand them, that is their problem, not yours. It is rude to get angry at a learner. But sometimes, people are just stressed or in a hurry. If a cashier or a busy clerk sighs when you ask, "Sorry?" you can handle it with grace. You can say, "I'm sorry, I'm still learning English. I just want to make sure I do this right." Usually, when people hear this, their attitude changes completely. They become patient. They realize you are making an effort. Imagine you are at a post office. The queue is long. The clerk, a man named Bob, is stressed. He speaks fast. You don't understand. You say, "Sorry, could you say that again?" Bob sighs loudly and looks angry. You don't get angry back. You smile and say, "I'm sorry, I know you are busy. I just really want to get this right." Bob takes a deep breath. "Okay," he says slowly. I said, "Do you want a tracking number?" You say, "Yes, please." You solve the problem and calm the situation down by being polite. Now, let's look at a very modern problem. Listening through technology. We often talk on video calls like Zoom or Skype, or on the phone. The connection might be bad. The video might freeze. The audio might sound robotic. In these cases, you need specific phrases. If the screen freezes, you can say, "Sorry, my screen froze. Can you repeat that last sentence?" If the sound is bad, you say, "You are breaking up a bit. I can hear you, but it's not clear." Imagine you are on a Zoom call for work. Your boss, Ms. Green, is giving a presentation. Her internet is lagging. You hear, "The deadline for the..." Silence. Is Friday. You missed the most important part, the project name. You have to ask. You type in the chat, "Sorry, Ms. Green, you cut out for a second. Which project is due on Friday?" She sees the chat and answers, "The marketing project." You saved yourself again. Never guess on a deadline. Let's do a role play about giving and receiving complicated directions in a city. This is a classic test of listening. You are lost in a big city. You stop a passerby, a student named Liam. You ask, "Excuse me, how do I get to the Modern Art Gallery?" Liam thinks for a moment and says, "Okay, go straight down this street until you see a big fountain. Take a right at the fountain, walk past the cathedral, and then take the second left. It's the building with the blue roof." That is a lot of landmarks. Fountain, cathedral, blue roof. You need to verify this. You can say, Okay, let me repeat that to make sure. Straight to the fountain, turn right, go past the cathedral, then second left. Liam says, yes, that's it. You feel more confident. But wait, you want to check the distance. You ask, and is it far? About a 10-minute walk? Liam says, oh no, more like 20 minutes. Now you have the time as well. You are fully prepared for the walk. I want to talk about a subtle skill. Reading between the lines. Sometimes, people don't say exactly what they mean. They imply it. This is called implied meaning. For example, if you are talking to a friend late at night, and they say, wow, look at the time, I have an early start tomorrow. They are not just telling you the time. They are implying that they want to go home or that they want you to leave. If you don't pick up on this, you might stay and annoy them. You can check the implication. You can say, oh, do you need to get up early? Should I head out? Your friend will say, yes, sorry, but it was great seeing you. You understood the hidden message. Another example is in a shop. You try on a dress or a suit. You ask the shop assistant, how do I look? The assistant hesitates and says, well, it's certainly unique. The word unique can be good or bad. The tone suggests it might not be the right look. You can check. You think it's not quite right for me? The assistant will be relieved to be honest. Honestly, I think the blue one suits you better. You are glad you asked, otherwise you might have bought the wrong outfit. Let's move on to a scenario where you have to clarify a rule or a law. This is very important if you are living in or visiting a new country. Rules can be different. Imagine you are parking your car. You see a sign, but it is covered in snow or hard to read. A police officer walks by. You can ask, excuse me, officer, is it okay to park here on Tuesdays? The officer looks. No, today is street cleaning day. You will get a ticket. You move your car immediately. You saved money and trouble by asking. Or perhaps you are at a swimming pool. There is a sign with a picture of a camera with a line through it. You are not sure if it means no photos at all, or just no flash photography. You ask the lifeguard, sorry, does this mean I can't take any photos, or just no flash? The lifeguard says, no photos at all in the pool area, please. You put your phone away. It is always better to ask than to break a rule by accident. Now, I want to talk about emotional clarification. Sometimes, misunderstandings happen because of feelings, not words. Maybe your friend sounds sad on the phone, but she says she is fine. You hear the sadness in her voice. You can ask about it. You can say, you sound a bit down. Are you sure you are okay? This is a very deep checking question. It checks the emotion, not just the words. Your friend might then open up. Actually, I had a terrible day at work. You connected on a human level because you listened to how she spoke, not just what she said. We also need to discuss what to do when you realize you made a mistake because you didn't clarify earlier. This happens. You walk into the wrong room. You sit in the wrong seat. You eat someone else's lunch. When you realize, you have to apologize and explain. You can say, oh, I am so sorry. I misunderstood you earlier. I thought you said this seat was free. The person will usually forgive you. We are all human. You can add, my English isn't perfect yet, so sometimes I get confused. People are usually very understanding when you admit a mistake. Let's do a final complex scenario involving planning a group holiday. This involves money, dates, and preferences. It is a minefield for misunderstandings. You are with 3 friends, Oliver, Amelia, and Sam. You are at a cafe planning a trip. Oliver says, I think we should rent a villa in Spain. It's cheaper if we split it 4 ways, and we can cook our own food. Amelia says, but I really wanted to go to a hotel in Italy where they serve breakfast. Sam says, I don't care where we go, as long as it's near a beach. You are listening to all of this. You want to make sure everyone is happy. But you also need to clarify the budget. You see a potential conflict. You ask, okay, let me clarify. Oliver, you want a villa in Spain to save money. Amelia, you want a hotel in Italy for convenience. Is the budget the main issue here? Oliver says, yes, I can't afford a fancy hotel in Italy. Now the problem is clear. It's about money. You can then suggest a solution. What if we find a cheaper hotel in Italy, or a villa in Italy? You used a clarification question to find the root of the problem. As we come to the end of this huge lesson, I want to summarize everything we have talked about today. We have learned that listening is not passive. It is an active sport. You have to participate. We learned phrases like, sorry, I didn't catch that. Do you mean, could you say that again? So, what you're saying is, and let me repeat that back to you. We practice these in coffee shops, hospitals, offices, airports, and parties. I want you to remember that being fluent does not mean understanding every word immediately. Being fluent means having the confidence and the tools to manage the situation when you don't understand. If you wait until you understand 100% of English before you speak, you will wait forever. Even I, as your teacher, sometimes ask people to repeat things. It is normal. It is human. The most important thing is the connection between you and the person you are talking to. If you smile, if you are polite, and if you try your best, people will help you. Don't let the fear of making a mistake stop you from talking. Every time you ask, sorry, your brain gets a little stronger. Every time you check, do you mean? Your memory gets better. You are training yourself to be a better communicator every single day. I really hope that this lesson has opened your eyes to the power of clarification. I hope you feel ready to go out into the world and have those conversations. Go to a restaurant and order something complicated. Call a customer service line and ask a question. Talk to a stranger and ask them to repeat themselves. Do it with a smile. Do it with confidence. Before I go, I want to give you one final piece of advice. Keep a small notebook with you. When you are out and you hear a phrase you don't understand, or you use a clarification phrase that worked really well, write it down. Later, look it up or practice it. Create your own personal dictionary of survival phrases. This will help you grow faster than anything else. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Alex, at English in Fluency. It has been a pleasure to guide you through these listening strategies. You have worked hard, and you should be proud of yourself. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our future lessons. We have so many more exciting topics to cover together to help you on your English journey. Leave a comment below and tell me which phrase you are going to use tomorrow. I read all your comments, and I love hearing from you. Remember, don't just nod and smile. Ask, clarify, check, understand. That is the path to fluency. See you in the next video. Goodbye for now.